You're very welcome, everyone, to tonight's talk. My name is Ronald O'Connell, and I work in the Town Museum in Derry. And we have been working on an exhibition called the Battle of Knockavoe, the 500th anniversary. And it opened there at the beginning of June, and it finishes next week. It's in the Alley Theatre in Strabane, just at the foot of Knockavoe. And it's been a great success, and it's been a very popular exhibition. And in no short amount to our guest tonight, Seán Ó Brógain, who is an artist and illustrator, working largely with the historic period, but has been published widely. And his job is to kind of recreate what we can't really see or what we don't know it looks like, mainly through very scant evidence. And he's been doing incredible work so far, and he's been doing incredible work all around the world. And we're very excited and grateful that he could join us here today. And if you have any questions, please do pop them into the Q&A as well. I'm going to start sharing the screen here. Let me see now. I'll swap this around. Get the chat up. Hey. All right, bear with me, Seán. Just getting this.
No, that's fine. Thanks for the great introduction, by the way.
Oh no, you're welcome. Well, funny, I've been familiar with your art for quite some time. I'm from Donegal, and very first time I actually saw your art was this next image, and I suppose in many ways you're up there with the greats. You know, having your work on stamps and national stamps. And when was this, Seán? This image? I suppose it was.
Well, this was commissioned in 2006 by Antost. It was actually released in February 2007. If memory serves me correct, it's a long time ago now. Originally, I think they were going to have it in September, but I think, you know, given the importance of that event, the Donegal County Council wanted to sort of make it the year of the Flight of the Earls, so it kind of got published a little bit earlier than expected. But there was quite a lot of work on this one now, and I kind of had to consult quite a few people and clans and trying to find out if there was, you know, sometimes in a clan they'll have maybe information that might not necessarily have made it into a book. So, for instance, I wanted to know that was there anything in the lore of the clan about Rory O'Donnell, and you know, because we all know Red Hugh was red or ginger or Rua, but I wasn't sure of Rory, you know, because sometimes these guys are, you know, black, you know, but apparently according to the clans people, Rory was fair haired, so this is why Rory's sort of blonde in this. I didn't make him Scandinavian blonde. I just kept him kind of within the parameters of what you would see in Donegal, you know. So these two guys now were friends of mine. The man who modeled Rory was actually a blacksmith, and the man who modeled Hugh O'Neill was actually a guy called Boyd Rankin. Unfortunately, he's passed now. And they sat for an evening and just allowed me to take photographs of them. And Tony Murphy, who's the blacksmith who represents Rory here, you know, he was the same age as Rory, so he was actually perfect. And he didn't have a goatee beard now, but the look that he has is the look that he had, you know. So I didn't do too much manipulation of the images there, you know. So and then the biggest difficulty was actually trying to find out the type of ship, the size of the ship, and because of the size of these ships are have quite a wide range. This is actually quite a small one, so there was a few things at that, and just trying to do it in such a way that was kind of graphic and, you know, it would be sort of straightforward, you know, because at the end of the day it's going to go on a stamp, so it can't be too fiddly, you know. And the other one then is is a sepia colored picture, again with the two heads, and that was for a first day cover. So yeah, so that was it, you know. And
yeah, I remember seeing them on there was an education pack done by the local museum here, and it was like a learning pack, you know.
That's right, yeah.
And that art on the right was on it, and it's quite iconic. And the stamps too, you know, if you even Google Flight of the Earls, you know, this is what comes up, and this is what I mean, we know Hugh looks like as well, you know. But this is
Yeah,
what,
we've got a lot of representations of him, and I mean John McCabe was showing me at the time the photograph he sneaked out of the Vatican, I think, back then, of the fresco with Hugh sitting behind the Pope and all, you know. So it was kind of, it was interesting, you know. So Boyd here has a little bit more hair on top than he originally
yeah,
actually had, but you know, at that stage, there was still a little bit of debate whether that was Hugh O'Neill. So now it's accepted that that is Hugh O'Neill, and that famous portrait is Hugh O'Neill. So, and they do correspond quite well with each other. So, but then, you know, a sort of a middle-aged man with a big beard and short hair, and European, you know, unless he's very distinctive, you know, it can be quite generic looking, you know.
yeah,
So this is it, you know. I try to get them a little elements of Gaelic gear with the cloaks and a few things like that, you know.
yeah.
So yeah,
But
so
I
that
suppose Hugh's famous for more court dressing as well, isn't he? I mean, he'd spend time in court, and he kind of,
yeah, well, there is that even who was raised as well, and the Paler with an Anglo-Irish family or an English family, you know. But the thing is that they still had their constituents, if you want to use it, if that is a appropriate word, you know. And there was a little bit of pushback from the poets and the more conservative elements of Gaelic society about the drift of Irish men in particular into English fashion, the short hair and the open breeches and things like this, you know. So there was a little thing going on there within Gaelic society, but you know, at the end of the day, they still had to. They couldn't probably put forward too much of a. I'm not going to do the fingers about, you know, in brackets, but you know, that they didn't want to be perceived either as being kind of backward. So I mean, if you see oh, if I can remember the man's name now, there's a picture from 1603 of an Irish lackey. That's the title of it. The guy's name will come to me. The guy has quite long hair and he's a very short jacket. It's almost like a sort of it's white at the bottom, and he's wearing really tight long trousers and black shoes, and he's got the infamous Irish dart with him, you know. And that's the look that the English were complaining about, that was kind of uncivilized. And before that, which we'll see when we get into the images from Knockavoe, there was a yet again there was a slightly different fashion in Ireland, which would have kind of been similar in the Highlands of Scotland and probably the Western Isles to some degree, and we'll get into Gallaglass and all that. But the cairn or the general lightweight warriors would have had the Laney Moore, you know, the white saffron colored shirt and all, you know. So there's a number of things. That clothes are very important at this period. That comes up quite a lot when you're doing research.
yeah,
And you'll hear the English talk about it, and you'll hear the Irish poets say, you know, our men are become degenerate with these kind of modern clothes, and you hear it today. I mean, you're going to hear it, you know, with crew cuts and floppy topped hair and long hair and the whole thing. So there's a lot of, there's a lot of this stuff is not new. When you know, like, you know, when you have your dad giving out to you about your tight jeans or your
yeah,
your basketball boots back in the 80s, you know, your spaceman boots, as my dad called them. So, you know, you've got that thing where younger people are probably going to want to drift towards the modern, whereas you get the more conservative elements saying, actually, you know, this is you're following, we're going to lose our identity, you know. So there's a lot of stuff there to
yeah.
cover. And I had to try and get a little bit of those things in there. This is there's just a lot of subtle stuff that you have to try and consider. I think is probably the best word for it, you know.
Of course.
Sorry, I'm probably going on too much. You're probably getting too.
No, no. I was just thinking this is obviously ahead of 90 years ahead of the period of Knockavoe, but I just thought it was an interesting one to start with, and
Yeah. No, I love doing that job. That was a really fun project. It was very difficult. I mean, the way the stamps have actually turned out is not actually how I originally conceived them. Because as you go along, you know, your idea changes, and
yeah,
you know, when you get information. I mean, I work very closely on that project with Dr. John McCavitt, Eamon O'Keefe, and a number of other academics and historians, just to get the broad stroke of it, but John in particular was very, very good now. I mean, he had a lot of stuff that wasn't actually published, and it was really, really important for this. So I always consider these stamps as a collaborative effort between myself and John, and then Vincent O'Donnell, unfortunately, he's passed now as well. And I went to see him, and we had a talk about this, and it was actually him who told me that, from his recollection, from what he used to be told as a kid and all, that Rory was fair-haired and all this. These things are very important. The lore, the folklore is it does not. I mean, a lot of people dismiss it, but I mean, it is. You kind of do have to consider it. I mean, that is history. I mean, whether it's
of course, and often rings true.
And there's a broad book in it, so yeah, no, that was a great project, So I really
I'll show you a few others, Sean.
Sorry, kind of get
these are from the same period as well. Oh, this is great. We'll just go through these few, and you can just tell me what they are and what they're about, because not a lot of people have seen these, and we actually projected these onto the walls for the 400th anniversary. And it was fantastic because they were lit up, and they lit up in front of the walls in the Guildhall. But here's the first one.
There's a couple of giant prints of these in a number of different places. So I don't know who has them now, but Park made massive versions of some of those. So they might be in, I think one of them might be in Donegal office, county council office or something. Yeah, this is the work for Derry City of Culture. That was 2013, was it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so this is James. So I was asked to do a series of drawings to represent the creation of the walls that we see today, because obviously there was a settlement there before the English, and then the English created a sort of an outpost, if you like. I always think of it like frontier, Wild West sort of a thing, and you can actually see that in the maps where there's a lot of tumble down and damage structures from the previous ecclesiastical settlement. So this is just a generic image of James giving out the charter for the city of Londonderry, and that's what that is. Yeah, this is on the water side, looking across at the island of Derry. So I thought it was important to get that aspect, that Derry was essentially an island. I mean, the bog side was what it was back then. You probably couldn't build anything in it, but so this is, I tried to take a slightly different perspective, because I mean, if I was doing this, I'd be going around trying to get different vantage points to have a look at, strategically what would be important, and how you would lay out their fortification.
This is top of the hill, isn't it? This is what they call top of the hill.
Yeah, so I'm not sure. It's probably over Prehan House, somewhere like that neck of the woods,
Yeah.
Again, this is just that's placed. I took the position of Naylor's Road.
That's right.
Yeah, so that's Bishopgate.
Brilliant.
And then that would be the big house behind Bishopgate, the governor's house. So again, I mean, there's probably somebody out there who knows exactly what process.
It's good. I didn't realize that was it. I didn't, from hearing you now, because I just see these and I know it's the wall. I'm not sure where it is. And now here's the last one. This is.
And if you actually look all the maps, because the map was the important thing, and was the consistent element in that project, you'll actually see that it's in black. So the maps all have the city walls in black. So, yeah. And that's Cahir O'Doherty leaving Derry after he ransacked it.
He's looking distinctly pleased with himself.
Well, I kind of, that's the drawing. You see, that drawing was done after the painting. I did a painting for Dr. Eamon O'Keefe.
Yeah.
And this was a drawing that was based on that. So it's a little bit different from the actual painting. But I did try, even with the horse, to avoid any sort of triumphal kind of smugness, if you want. So if you actually look at the horse, he's kind of tired. It's the middle of the night. They're leaving the city. They've just come in from Inch or wherever they were based, and they're heading back down towards I was going to say Kildare there, I meant Culmore. So I actually have another bigger painting of this event, but when I did the research, I found out that the original painting that I'd done was up on top of where is it now, Cragan, whereas they actually went out towards Culmore, so I had to change the angle and the view and all. So I did quite a lot of trekking around the foil to try and get a view of the city itself, but it's very, very difficult with all the modern build to try and get a view of it, you know. So
even the tower is gone. Of course, that's our tower museum is a recreation of what that tower might have looked like.
Yeah,
probably in the wrong place, but
yeah. Oh well, look, I mean, sure. You know that I think there was I've read something recently there. They found new tunnels in the city, so probably more basements and cellars and things. So that's it.
when we started talking about this, you'd sent me some art, which I'm just going to quickly share, because it was obviously about a battle, and battles at that time, the Count of Knockavoe, and then of course the Count of Knockavoe, and I think this is from that, is it, Sean?
Oh yeah, that's the cover art for the book for Osprey publishing,
Yeah.
Galahad. So that was the Warrior series. So what was the brief for this? 2 Galahad, one young, one old, slightly different equipment, obviously, and then there are 2 attendants. So you'll see a bowman, a cairn, and a guy behind the guy swinging the axe with the Irish dart, which is mentioned a lot,
You see someone getting an axe in the underarm there. I mean, that's
yeah. So this is Knockavoe,
yeah,
which is obviously the other one, Knockavoe and Knockavoe. So this is the other famous Galoglass battle, where essentially they were allowed to just bleed each other white, because then, as the Anglo-Irish would prefer if the Irish kind of sort of got rid of each other, do the heavy lifting. So that's essentially, so you'll see some English flags in the background, sort of Henry VIII period, sort of early Tudor equipment and stuff, and you'll see some of the sort of more Anglo type warriors in the background, So yeah, so those the foreground figure here, the older one, he's actually based on one of the English maps, which shows the Galoglass chiefs on the map, where Doe Castle would be, and Gidor, and down here, and what in the Rosses and all, so.
And these types of battles, Sean, I mean, they're not like Roman legion, rank and file, or Greek phalanx. I mean, the formations line up once they start. It's essentially a melee.
Well, I don't know. I mean, the reason I say that is, I mean, obviously, depends who you're reading. I mean, they talk about the battle and, as the formation of the Galoglass. So they must have had some form of formation, but I would say once they kind of got into it, it wouldn't probably be like phalanxes with the Greeks, where they had to, by necessity, overlap the shields to protect each other, because there's a weakness on one side. These guys have no shields, just their armor and their helmet. And then what's the famous quote? If a Galoglass turns up and he doesn't have certain equipment, he gets fined. But if he's no helmet, he doesn't get fined, because once somebody hits him, that's a big enough fine. So there's a kind of a fatalism to the whole thing, So again, this was we have information about these guys, and we don't. So it's kind of like the more information we have, the more we seek. So I mean, we know from the English sources and the representations on a variety of sculptures what they basically look like. I mean, I've just been working on a painting of Brickius McKinnon, and he's sort of 1360, and his tombstone is in Iona, and he's essentially dressed the same as that big guy, but he doesn't have the chainmail on except around his neck. So these guys must have been, well, obviously the gear worked, they wouldn't have been using it, but it carries on down probably to the mid 16th century.
I have another one here, Sean, on the right, because I'm going to show your own gallows glass for the exhibition, where we can maybe talk a little bit more about who were the gallows glass and your inspiration for them. But I have two here. I don't know why I paired them together, but I thought it was a really interesting.
Yeah. Well, this was a little bit of a tricky one. The one on the left, actually. Well, it's on my left here, where the guy's grabbing the woman, and the young guy, the caring attendant, is the horse boy, whatever phrase you want to use for him. He's playing the Irish pipes nonchalantly while this is going on, and the husband's drawing the dagger. This was the coin and livery. The author wanted to show something about coin and the aspect of coin and livery at this time. So the Anglo-Irish lords would have used the gallows glass as well as the Gaelic lords. So they had to put them somewhere, because you don't really have a system of barracks as that the redcoats would have had later on. I'm just using that as generic for English, the British Army later on in Ireland. But so we kind of had to create something. Now, I had to be careful with this one, because I didn't want to be too flippant with it, but I didn't, so it's just him grabbing the woman, and this was sort of something that came up in the documents that the author had given me, and that's really what it is. And then the next one is Farset Moor. So again, he's Farset Moor's 1567. So again, you've got your Karen with his saffron colored laney, and you've got the gallows glass swinging at him. The other one is, you'll see some of the same elements in it, but the gallows glass this time is just wearing his accaton, which is a padded armor, soft armor, some people call it, but it's set sort of 1550s, something like that, and it's set in an English style wooden framed house. So the brother is the head model for the gallows glass in Farset Moor, and the Cairn is another guy who was a friend of mine. He's a stuntman, actually, Lemuel Black. He's from Belfast, a great guy, and he was the model for that. So sometimes I'll use people I know, and sometimes I don't. The other one, the kid in the background is actually my nephew David, when he was about, I don't know, 13 or 14 or something like that, but the rest of them are not, so, and it's important, I think, to get the Anglo side of this into this story, because it's really, really important, and women as well. And women put up with a lot of difficulties with like, these boys. Like, they're just they're totally alpha probably in many respects. So I'm just glad we live today. Well, I am anyway. I don't know whether people think it's very romantic, but I don't know. Pretty bloody and pretty short and not terribly comfortable for most of it. Today we seek to go out jogging on the beach and get into cold water and do the Wim Hof and the whole thing. These guys lived that, so they didn't need to do any of this. They were going the other way, But no, so the Farset Moor is an interesting one. So that basically what's happening there is the Cairn is trying to get back across the river. The tide has come in the Swilly, and the gallows glass are coming down the O'Donnell gallows glass are coming down the hill there, are in the Queen or whatever you call it, up that neck of the woods, past the road to Remelton.
The Thorn, that kind of the Thorn Road, that kind of.
Yeah, that's up that neck of the woods. You'd need to talk to Thomas. He had it all mapped out and all,
He did, yeah, and he showed me the maps, and they're brilliant. From what I understand, they were trapped when the tide came in, couldn't get any further. You can still go down and see it today. Was that for Osprey as well, or tell us a little bit about
it? The scene, the interior scene was part of that gallows glass 1250 1600 book. The Farset Moor one was actually one I did for Thomas for his article about Farset Moor. It was kind of an interesting battle, and that's the famous one. But what did he say? I think he said there was 4 others. It was actually it was sort of on the border, so it was sort of that field kind of beside where the rugby pitch is today. Those fields there would have been. It was an area where they would have had meetings. Basically, probably the O'Neills and the Donnells, the Gallaghers or whatever would have met, sort of for treaties and whatever arrangements they would have made between each other. You know, the politicking, and I think there was horse races as well. But you'd need to really speak to him about the intricate history of it, because he's kind of looked at all that, you know. So I just had to create something that was kind of dynamic and a bit of movement in it and fairly straightforward, because the scope for that particular article was just give an image that would kind of be representative of the type of shenanigans that would have went on, you know. So, and this is it again. Kieran he's got a helmet with him there, and I think he's got dart. Yeah, he's got a dart with them, and the ring pommel sword and a few things of that, you know.
A lot of yellow in the fabric, and I suppose this brings us on to the next image, which is the first one that you did first for Knockavoe. Oh, let me just skip this. Here we go.
Yeah, that's the craze or whatever. Never sure what to. You know, they're basically dressed as Karen.
Yeah.
There's a number of visual sources for this look. Some are 1520s. It goes right up to, I suppose, images of Ireland, 1570, early 1570s, John Perrow's campaign. But a debate then, you know, when this changes to Francisco de Cuellar describes the Irish short jackets, their mangy blankets, and their long tight trousers. He doesn't mention the shirt, but other writers earlier do. So at some point, I think anyway, this is only my opinion, the Laney gets transitioned out. I don't know whether it's because there's a collapse, and because of the endemic warfare, there's a collapse in linen, the you know, the linen industry, you know, the homespun, whatever you want to
Flax, yeah.
call it, yet flax industry, the indigenous flax industry, or there just isn't the money to buy in the yardage of linen that it would take to make one of these shirts. Now there's an interesting drawing from Cowdray House, which was a big house in England, and they had a Henry VIII period painting of the Siege of Boulogne in France. That was 1544, I think, if memory serves. And these guys are kind of based on that drawing, because if you actually look at it, Henry VIII brought Irish Cairn to France with him. He probably had a retinue of Gallowglass as well, but the Cairn are represented in the drawing. And the original painting got destroyed when the house got burned down, but the drawing does survive, and is actually very useful for even just seeing what the everyday Henrician soldier looked like. But one of the things I thought was interesting was that the sleeves are kind of seem to be up over the shoulder. So if you have big sleeves like that, they're probably going to be in the way when you're doing certain things. And I'm assuming that they had a button or some kind of a tab, or, you know, possibly even put it into the kris, which is the belt. You know, this shirt would have went down to the feet if it, you know, because it's pulled up over a belt, and that's why you get that kind of belly on it. You see it at the back of this foreground figure, which is pulled up over the belt, and then that's the way the short and the skirt part of the shirts, so that it's not tripping them up, you know. So there's a number of references to poets and different people who, you know, how they wear their laney. But there's also, we know as well that they would have had trews, and possibly shorts. You see that earlier on in the Middle Ages, but I've got shown them bare-legged here because they've just crossed the.
This is a cattle raid, isn't it?
Yeah. So the idea of this is the home there on the Strabane side of the river. That's kind of the idea of it, to just give that generic idea that they're on that home stretch before they get into what is today Strabane and up onto Knockavoe. But it could be anywhere like that. So it's just basically them. They've raided the O'Donnell territory. They've got the little black cattle, the Dexter cattle. That's why the men look quite big and the cattle are quite small, because I've that, you know, the English talk about their miserable cattle. So I am trying to represent a little bit of that as well. Now I've given those Irish guys, I've given the glibs, which is the short hair with the long front. But actually, the one of the things, if you actually look at, you only really see that in the Albrecht Dürer picture in 1521 of the Irish in Antwerp. Now, there's a debate about whether he actually saw them or he's drawing that from a description, because the other representations of the Irish do show them with kind of shoulder length hair, and sometimes it's clipped quite short at the front. But the English do talk about a long fringe that cover their eyes and a few things of that. So there's a number of different things there. So I just thought with these young guys, and as well as that, it's actually a hairdo that we're actually seeing
Yeah.
prevalent at the moment with younger guys, maybe not so much older guys, but definitely younger guys have the short back and sides and the floppy top, you know, and that is kind of what they had. So I would say probably what you have is a situation where it's actually everybody's not uniformly trimmed. You'll probably have the old guys with the long hair and the young guys go, well, we don't want to look like some old dude, so we'll do this. And then at some point, those young guys become old and the young fellas go, yeah, I want to have my hair down to me over the shoulder again. Do you know what I mean? There's a whole the dynamic of how things are done. So
And speaking of hierarchy, that leads us nicely.
Fashion. Oh yeah, the hierarchy. Yes, that's the chieftain and his wife, and then you've got the monk, and then the brother of the chief, possibly, or a relative, and then you know, talking to the son, and you know, oh, you know, you could be the chief. You know, you'd be better than the, you know, the usual thing, and then you get down to the third level there, where you've got your musicians and your olives and your military caste and your cavalryman, and then you go down again. You could see the little cattle again, and the farmers and the people who always do the real work in society, the farmers. So, you know, they're the ones who sustain everything, you know, with their craft and all the rest of it, and take the burden of things as well, you know. So that's why you see the guy with the scythe and the women are making the butter and somebody else is grinding there, you know. So that's just it's just a simple way to show that. I mean, you know, it's probably, there is far more nuance to it than that.
Yeah.
But again, you know, you're having to try and visually show this, and you know, if you probably got into the nitty gritty, you probably spent 2 weeks just trying to construct it and figure out how you're going to, you know, try and construct that before you even get to painting. So
it's great because
sorry.
No, I mean it's just fantastic to see it, because there's the individuality of all the little characters you draw. I mean, you know, it is fantastic to see it, just them all together like that, all looking different, all having.
Well, I you know, it's the farmers are just kind of like just getting on with what they've got to do. The soldiers are standing around waiting for orders, and the nobles and the clergy are conspiring. So there's a little bit of conspiracy in that second line there, you know, but it's really just to get that idea across that there was a lot of stuff going on. And you know, if you read even about Red Hugh O'Donnell, or even you know, Hugh O'Neill, I mean, there's a lot of boys buried in bog holes throughout Ulster and the rest of Ireland in this period, and in England too, mind you, and Scotland. So I mean, you know, there's a kind of a grab for the top, you know, and I kind of wanted to try and show a little bit of that, but again, you know, it's got far more nuance than this image. But hopefully the image will be a shorthand, and people, if they want to find out a little bit more, can kind of dig deeper, and they'll see then why I've kind of tried to show it this way, you know. So
actually, and speaking of women, this was an image that you'd sent me, but I didn't know anything about it, and because I know of a battle of essentially men, women are you know, not represented as much, and this was an image that you'd sent me, and I just wondered, did you know anything about it, or what was this from? Maybe you know.
Yeah, this is a series of watercolors. They show the cairn again with their beards and their mustaches and their long hair.
Yeah.
I this is the Herber. I can never say it actually. Herber Recul or something like that. But as far as I know, it's Flemish word. Probably somebody's going to correct me on this, and that's fine. And then everybody will know exactly what it's from. But yeah, so there were a number of books out in the 16th century showing the customs and clothing of peoples of Europe. You know, there's actually an earlier one which shows quite a lot of Irish gear, and the Shlaney's are pleated, and so I mean, this is what I'm saying, because we only get it's a bit the analogy people use, you know, if an archaeologist digs in Ireland in 2,000 years time and he finds a Toyota Corolla, will he assume that everybody drove Toyota Corollas? You know, so there's that thing where we're working with very little there, but actually if you were there and you went back in time, then you probably find that there was quite a variety of things. But people would, I mean, we've more socks and underwear and shirts and trousers and shoes. These people probably only had maybe a couple of suits of clothes at all, if at all. You know, so it's a whole different idea. But yeah, these are the women, and some of the other ones are actually quite interesting, and they show women with sort of well, how do you even describe it? I can't even describe it. Around their head and things, and you'll find those in sort of Flemish paintings from the 14th century, you know. But at the stage they're assigned to Irish women, you know.
And the colors are very vibrant.
You'll see the same white headdress in one of the John Derrick's images of Ireland, where you see the woman with the hands up. They've burned her house and they've stolen her cattle. It's one of the Irish raiding images. And a lot of people don't know what that is, but actually, if you look at this series of watercolors, you'll actually see a woman represented with that. So it's basically, if you imagine a huge, big, wide, maybe a 3-inch, 4-inch bandage of white linen, and it's just wrapped and wrapped. So around the head, and it forms this kind of cheesecake look. I don't know. I'm not even very good at describing this. It's terrible. I can't describe this, and me that working at this all the time.
Oh, you probably draw it. I would see it, you know.
Yeah, it's like a wheel of cheese, but white sitting on the woman's head. And then, you know, their hair would be covered in stuff, you know. So that's probably.
I have some John Derrick coming up later, Sean. So maybe
you'll might be in there. Yeah. Well, these are just again generic types of weapons. You know, the dart, the bow, the claymore, which is infamous for the Scottish sword, Irish ring pommel. There's quite a few of those that have been found, and they're all a little bit different. So I've just gone for just one particular type. Again, there's the axe. Now I haven't represented the full length of the shaft on that, and then the skin, which is the ubiquitous Irish weapon, you know, 21-inch blade, and you know, was quite infamous. So that goes through, and that becomes, I suppose, you know, you see the Highlanders today, they have a number of daggers and skin do and all those, and those, it's they're sort of the modern or more modern version of these, you know, but that original one would have been this sort of skin. But like 21-inch blade, it's nearly a sword. I mean, you know, some boy come at you with that in a dark alleyway. You know what I mean? It wouldn't be, you'd be going the other way unless you had unless you had one of them gallows glass axes, then you might be able to defend yourself against them, you know. But again, these are just generic weapons. Again, if you really want to get into that, you know, if you talk Thomas or you talk to Dave Swift.
Well, it's funny, we are going to talk to Thomas and we're going to record it.
They will show you a whole variety. There's subsets of them and types, and you know, and you know, the time constraint we had there. So I mean, it's very difficult to kind of get it all in there. But again, this is just to kind of these images will hopefully, if people are interested, they'll go and find out a little bit more. And there's quite a lot of work being done in America at the moment. There's a website, the Wild Irish, Justin Runyon, those guys are doing a lot of work. Dave Swift's done a lot of work on Clave on Gallo Glass. There's a lot of guys doing stuff, and it's serious stuff. It's not silliness, it's very, very serious. And the Wild Irish has a lot of very interesting stories that they're actually starting to put out on their blog and all, So so if you want to find out more, check those guys out. I mean, they're well worth it. Some of the stories are actually class. They're really, really funny. So, and then they give an insight into the curiousness of our ancestors and some of the mad stuff that some of these stories are crazy, so
they really, I mean, having the summits really shows I suppose in many ways the kind of brutality of it, which is why we can actually do it, just to show the type of weapon you use. I'm going to flip through the next one, Sean, but this kind of introduces the O'Neill and the O'Donnell emblems, and then of course we have these characters, who are really striking. And on the left we have the O'Donnells, and on the right, Con O'Neill.
Again, you in the background, then again, I've tried to represent the cairn behind the O'Neill, and the Battle of Gallo Glass behind the O'Donnells. The equipment, again, they're all wearing basonets, which seems to be the helmet of choice. I had a look at the Book of the De Burgos, which is dated, I think, to 1571, and a number of these things, these types of helmets, are represented. Now, they're I think they're quite archaic for 1571, but no, they're either a bit like the way Greeks portrayed themselves in the classical times, and sort of heroic garb and things. It might be that. But it seems to come up in a lot of representations of Irish of this period, and you'll see them on the various tombs. You'll see them in Dungiven and all the rest of it. So again, ring pommel swords, the spear. So the idea is that O'Neill is essentially on a horse. So again, I had to try and kind of get suitable heads for these guys, so we got the Rua, and we got the Du, and then we've got the O'Neill, which we don't really have much information on him. So again, he's wearing the Acadon, the Zan, and the Brat as well. But I wanted that idea that, again, him and his cairn are coming through into Strabane, or sort of late in the evening, and the O'Donnells are there at night. So that's why one is yellowy orange, and that's why the other one is blue, is to try and represent the O'Donnells just before they send the Gallo Glass in, and O'Neill is marching maybe into Lifford that evening. That's kind of what I was trying to show. That's why the color is quite different in both of them,
And these are faces of people obviously, but they are quite.
I don't know if I could say their names, so you might not be terribly happy. But I do know Smiley is the O'Neill. He's a friend of ours. He's a long time reenactor. Does a lot of sword work, stunt work. He's been in the Viking series, a number of other things. The O'Donnell one, the ginger, the red beard there, that's a friend of mine from school. I don't think he's watching this, but I haven't told him. So but the other O'Donnell chap is Manistu, isn't it?
And they're brilliant because they bring these strong characters to life. And of course, for those of you who don't know about the Battle of the Story of it, I'm sure most of you do, but basically that the O'Neills have been raiding across the border. They wanted to put a threat to the O'Donnell, or at least put a large dent in it for the foreseeable. The O'Donnell raids and threats to the border, and so they did raid across, but after coming back victorious and camping in Knockavoe, The O'Donnells sneaked up on them in the middle of the night and slaughtered up to 900 of them. Of course, we only have one account of the battle, but it's quite brutal. And with just the last few slides will show this, but this is the next one. And just on the Gallo glass, and who were the Gallo glass? I mean, I'm going to skip forward another image here because I think I have some images here that you.
That's I think the sculptures from Dungiven, prior, and the sorry, excuse me, gets me my thoughts here. The drawing is Albrecht Dürer from 1521. That's the Antwerp one. So you can see the Albrecht Dürer when he shows the guy with the Gallo glass, got his claymore, he's got a bow, he's got an arm full of arrows, he's got the ubiquitous moustache, that the cromwell and chainmail, and he's got a long laney on him now, and he's got the big feet and the sandals. And then the other Gallo glass that's beside him, he's actually wearing you know, padded aketon, I suppose, or a coton, I don't know.
Because linen, when you and when you stack it together, and Thomas had shown us that the linen in layers can be quite can deflect quite a lot of damage from you know, because it's quite padded, you know, it's quite strong.
Well, I mean, you know, that again, my Gallo glass there, he's got the laney, he's got the trews and the leather shoes. I think there's one of those type of leather shoes in the Tower Museum. It's a big, whoever had it had a lot bigger feet than me anyway, and he's got his sword and the axe and the moustache and bassinet and all. And then the other guy is obviously a Karen, and I've given him that glib, that literal glib that the English write about. And he's got his brat, which is the cloak, and the honor, which is the little jacket, and it had a split sleeve so that it would accommodate the sleeve of the shirt. And again, I've given him trews and shoes and the darts, and he's got a skin on there too. But the belt is a Chris, you know, so they had the cloth belts as well, you know. And so the shirt is just pulled out over the top of the cloth belt, and it just bellies out over the top of it, you know. And so that's really it. I mean, it's trying to get these ideas across. You know, if you're not familiar with the laney, it's a bit hard to explain. And the thing is that, you know, again, we don't have one because linen doesn't survive in our bogs and all. That the wool survives and leather survive, but the linen doesn't. So again, there's a lot of debate about, you know, how the opening was in the shirt and how the sleeve was attached. We know it was kind of, it kind of had this bellowing kind of sleeve, but anyway, I'll leave that for somebody else who knows more about clothes making. But you know, I've just gone with, basically followed those watercolors, you know, and look at all the. I try my best to look at as many contemporary drawings, kind of get an idea, because so as an artist, like sometimes you will do something that represents something, but you actually haven't drawn it precisely. So this is why then the further away you get from the source, it can be a little bit confusing. So, you know, is that chainmail that they're trying to represent, or is it some sort of kind of a padded armor, soft armor, leather, linen, you know, whatever, you know. And but you can clearly see on the sculpture there that it's there's padded under the chainmail. Yeah, so this is my favorite.
This is from the exhibition. Obviously, these are done by Eris Historical Services, and I didn't have a better image at the full front, but here's the Gallo glass.
It's always difficult to get a kind of a, unless you have an SLR proper camera and you know you have all the gear. The phones can be, but the what do you call it, the depth of field and stuff can be a bit kind of weird on them, you know. But no, those are nice photographs. Actually, they've come out well.
Who were the Gallo glass, and what's their association with this area in particular?
Jeez, who the Gallo glass? Well, I mean, they're coming from the Western Isles of Scotland initially.
Yeah.
So some people, I'd say they're a mix of people, but you know, they come to Ireland as mercenaries essentially. You know, they're a kind of heavy infantry that are brought in to sort of counteract the sort of knights of the Anglo forces that would have been here.
Yeah.
And they just stay, and then they become kith and kin with the locals, you know. Some places they take over, you know. I mean, Knockavoe, one of the most significant things is the fact that McDonald's take over the Glens of Antrim, you know. So
That's right.
so I mean, there's you know, the Bishops are a Gaelic-sized clan. McDonald's,
It
you
must have
know,
lost their chieftain at Knock.
and then they lose that whole territory. No, hold on. How you doing? Sorry, I have a wee
right.
thing.
They're more than welcome.
Hey, I'm not sure where she is now. You'll have to go and have a wee look around for her now. I don't know where she is. She's not on here. But sure, you'll find her there. She'll not be too far away. Bye. Sorry about that.
That's all right.
That's okay. You know, you see these things on the internet, you don't think they're going to happen to you, though. So,
They happen. And people are used to it, Sean, and there's nothing wrong with that at all.
yes, that's it. Yeah, so this is the, oh God, this was a difficult one. How was I going to show this? You know, and I kind of, I took it just as they're going into the camp, and that way I kind of avoided shocking anybody with anything too grisly, you know.
These are amazing because you've done these differently in a kind of a blue light to kind of show that kind of a nighttime or moonlight even, you know. And they're definitely the most striking. I mean, that just looks incredible there. I mean, they're the most striking looking images that you've done for the exhibition. Before we finish, can you talk us through how you paint and how you do these, and you know, how you what you started? Because I remember you sent us like sketches where you'd been working it out, and then you'd kind of work through it and figured it. And how long does it take you to do these? And you know,
well, those 12 were 2 weeks. You know, before I headed off on my travels. The yeah, well, I for that particular job, it was important to have kind of fairly bold strokes. No pun intended about the battle now, but it was important to have kind of fairly. I took a kind of a baroque approach to it, which is big chunky dudes with big chunky weapons, and you know, to give that idea of that kind of, I suppose, is a sort of a macho thing, you could say. I'm not sure. I don't think about it that deeply. I think about how I'm going to, you know, I've got a concept, but I mean, it's a different thing than trying to explain your process. So that's why they're broad. I'd call them broad stroke illustrations, you know, particularly those blue ones, you know, and the camp scene. So they're just to try and get that atmosphere and that sense of the event, rather than getting bogged down in, you know, buckles and buttons, and make sure that I've got the right type of chainmail and things like that. Now, that doesn't mean I haven't researched it, but I'm trying to get a kind of a stronger sense of things. I mean, I from that one we're looking at, I mean, that idea comes from a picture I saw as a kid, and that idea has been in my head for literally decades, but I never had a vehicle to push it out to the public. But I did this, and I thought, I know what I'm going to do with this one. So, and it's funny, the things that kind of stay with you. And just when we were talking about that, and I got the list, I thought, that I know exactly how to approach this, and it was actually the easiest one to do because of it. So it's basically that is drawn out as initially in brown raw umber oil paint, and then I put a wee bit of blue on it, and that becomes the lightest blue in it, and then I just darken it and darken it and darken it. When I've got it kind of almost like a black and white photograph, then I hit it with the wash of blue over the top. So to give it that sort of effect, you know, and then I might go back in, you know, I you know, you can go crazy with these. You could put little glistenings of flame from the camp of the O'Neills and all that. But like, I mean, we're not even really quite sure what vantage point these guys would have been looking at that camp from, you know. So
You know, I just realized I actually didn't include that last one, and we can finish on that one because
what was that?
the
Oh
camp,
yeah, the camp, yeah.
yeah, I just realized that I didn't put that in. So give me 2 seconds.
Yeah, well, yeah, no, that's fine. No, that camp one again, it's again, it's to try and get that idea of um, these that outdoor living idea that, you know, everything was done outside, you know. So you got your villa and you got your musicians and you've got various important people and watching and standing around, you know, while, you know, just before it. And I want to maybe get a little bit of that idea that these guys didn't really know what was coming. They weren't expecting it, you know. But again, I wanted to counter the blue. I wanted to use the orange and the yellow and the brown to try and sort of, you know, be a contrast to the actual blue ones, you know. So you'll see yellow and blue in quite a lot of these picture result. And I want to get the idea that you're kind of standing there. That's why the flame, the fire is where it is when you're standing sort of looking at this. So it's trying to kind of, you know, if you went back to that, you know, that night and the woods cracking and the fire and the harp is going and your man's doing his praise poetry or singing a song, you know, and everybody's standing there, you know, what that would be like, you know.
And they have no idea. I mean, that's what I love about this. They have no idea what's about to happen.
They're
They're
just
sitting there victorious,
yeah.
and you know, it's such a tragedy. I mean, if you can think about the generation that's been wiped out.
Yeah,
What
well,
are you up to next, Sean? What are you doing now?
well, I've just finished a painting for a person in Australia about on Brickius McKinnon. So he was one of the henchmen of the Lower of the Isles. So it's sort of set in sort of 1360-ish. And he's standing on a Berlin, which was the Viking inspired galleys that the Irish and the Scots would have used. So that's a kind of a maritime scene, but he's standing on the little deck at the front of that ship, and he's holding onto a rope, and you see a shield and all. So that's based on a tombstone. He's got a job to do on Scottish soldiers from the 14th, 15th, and 16th and 17th century coming up. And I'm just teaching a lot of art at the moment as well, you know. So I have a wee course starting now in Darras Bay Hotel on Friday. So a bit of oil painting, you know. So I'm living in a very, you know, I'm living in a very inspiring place, you know. I mean, when I did the Gallagher last book, one of the things I said to the editor was like I live in I live in Gallo Glass country. This is what I've been surrounded with all my life, these places. And so eventually that's how I kind of fought this. So one of the few books I kind of fought for, you know, because usually you don't have time to do that. But I mean, when I heard that one was coming up, I said to him, like, I really would love to do that. And, you know, I went down at all sorts of places like Port and Glencolmkill and Mina Tork down near on the way to Port. And some of the scenes are set in specific places because the place sort of informs the picture. So I would see a place and I go, oh, you know, if you had that little building there, and you know, and that kind of little conjuring of ideas in my head, and then I set the scene inside that landscape or that series of buildings or something like that. So there's a few of them like that. I've been down to Knockavoe as well. It's a deceptive place if you're a bit of ground as well. You know, it is quite high, but you don't realize you're sort of ascending though, because it's quite a gentle, rolling kind of countryside. So that's what I'm at, you know. But it's mostly teaching actually. So I have a series of paintings that I'm for myself that I'm doing on Irish gods and some mythological stuff like Crom Crua and Manannan McClure and Dagda and all those sort of things, you know. So I'm kind of slowly getting through them, Morgan and all that. So those are kind of things that I'm. So I'm like most artists. I have the jobs that are coming in, and then I have the parallel work, the little things that kind of the itch you can't scratch creatively that you're trying to create. Sometimes it drives you crazy, and then it could be a long time before you get these things out because it's there, but it's not fully formed, and you're trying to get it. Get a kind of a solid idea of stuff. So I know that sounds probably very pretentious to people, but it's hard to explain. Anybody anybody musical, I'll have the same thing. It's just slightly different. The jingling, jangling in your head, and like a harmony or an air that just will not get out of your head, and it just wants you to do something with it. And it's the same with the painting. And it's strange some of the things that'll actually spark it. So for me, sometimes actually listen to music, something will kick off. Of the Dagda painting that I want to get done. I've only got at the drawing stage. It was actually walking along the coast, and I saw this weird tree. It just sounds so strange, and that weird tree, the way it grew out of the ground, almost like a fan. I thought, oh, would that be so cool if you had this god and that was his throne, like a Game of Thrones throne. But this was before that, right? But it was the branches of the tree radiating out, So there's all sorts of things like that, So I'm probably going off on a tangent here.
Oh, well, it's entirely related. For me, anyway. I mean, it's great to hear that you're all there as well. But the art that you're doing, the illustrations, I mean, they're burned in my brain for historic events and how people look locally, and that's how I see it now when I look back. And there's just not enough of it. And I look forward to seeing more of it. I have a couple of comments here from Jeremy Howard. Well done, Seán. Your illustrations really bring these projects to life, and I wish they were in my office. And Carlos Burgos from the
Carlos,
Irish Association. He's said, well done. He's just away into another meeting. He might be gone, so if you know him, Seán, maybe you could let him know that we'll be putting this out on YouTube afterwards, the live recording. So
I know Carlos. Thanks so much for the previous commenter as well. Thank you.
Yeah, and we're just hitting the hour mark. So on behalf of Derry City and Suburban Council, I just want to say thanks to everyone for joining in. Everyone has stayed till the very end, which is brilliant. And to you, Seán, thanks for joining. And you're in a very relaxed environment there, and it's definitely suited.
Oh no, it's great. I'm down in Rossbeg here. This is where I live now, and it's amazing. I mean, it's just Slieve 2 is just across the bay there where the famous battle happened, and I was talking to Robert Henshaw there recently. He wrote an article on the bodies they found on Inishburnagh there that dated to the 7th century, and there's obviously the battle's supposed to have happened in the 7th century. So there's so much archaeology down here. It is staggering, and it's just a nice place. People are lovely as well, So because I'm originally from Glenfin, you see, so after Blue Stacks, so I'm a mountain man transferred to the water.
That's brilliant.
Yeah, so that's it. I don't know what to do with myself now. I'm down near the water, you see.
Yeah,
so that's it. Listen, thank you very much. Well, thank you very much to everybody who's stayed on.
And thank you to Seán, and we'll be chatting soon.
Yeah, thank you very much, Ron. All right.
Take care. Thanks, everyone. Bye now.
Bye-bye.